This is case number 21CR37880, the State of Ohio versus Lance Runion. We are present for sentencing. Everyone's had an opportunity to review the PSI that was prepared.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Mr. Poncho, anything on behalf of the State?
Your Honor, at this point in time, the State would like to proceed on count 1 in the indictment, which is the attempted aggravated murder count, along with the 2 accompanying specifications. The State would submit to the court that the specifications themselves merge, and we would like to proceed on the 7-year firearm specification.
All right. Anything else?
Would you like me to address sentencing at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Your Honor. On February 15th of this year, Warren County Sheriff's Office Deputy Sarah Vaught and 3 of her fellow deputies responded to the defendant's residence for the most humanitarian of all reasons, a well-being check. None of these deputies had any idea that on the other side of the door, the defendant was watching them, either through the window or through a Ring video camera, which was actually recording the events of that evening. At the outset of this case, the State presented to the court a clip of that Ring video camera for the purposes of showing the strength of the evidence as a factor that the court utilized in determining what amount of bond should be set. However, at this point in time, we would like to play the entire video for the court so that the court can see, and more importantly, hear the defendant's words shortly before shooting at Deputy Vaught. Specifically, I would like to draw the court's attention to the 1 minute 26 second mark of the video.
point. See if she'll give me a garage code if she wants us to check on her.
You're dead. Those are the defendant's words. Your Honor, this was not an emotionally charged incident. It was not an escalating situation. Not that either of those would excuse the defendant's conduct. It was the most innocuous of all law enforcement contacts with a member of the public, a well-being check. And the defendant did not act impulsively. The defendant stated exactly what was about to happen. You're dead. Then he waited, lying in wait for over 2 minutes until Deputy Vaught arrived on the front porch. He opened the door, he aimed the gun directly at her head, and he pulled the trigger. It's truly a miracle that Deputy Sarah Vaught is still with us here today. And as much as Deputy Vaught is a victim in this particular case, this goes way further than that. We cannot have the freedoms that we enjoy here in Warren County without women and men who wear the uniform, who are willing to go out there in the middle of a snowstorm and knock on a door for a well-being check, not knowing that the person on the other end of that door is waiting to kill them. Yes, Mr. Runion's actions were an attack on Deputy Vaught. They were also an attack on the other law enforcement officers who were there that night. In fact, it was an attack on all law enforcement officers who in this day and age regularly get accused of escalating situations and overreacting with uses of force. But now they have another example of where on just a moment's notice, literally a second's notice, they have to be prepared to use deadly force to respond to these types of incidents. And ultimately, the defendant's conduct is an attack on a free society. We cannot ask law enforcement to put on the uniform, to go protect our families, our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors, so that all of us can live in a free and a safe society. And then when someone tries to kill one of those law enforcement officers, do anything other than impose a substantial penalty on that person. Now, from the state's perspective, there are two mitigating factors that benefit the defendant in this particular case as it pertains to sentencing. First, the defendant has accepted responsibility for his actions by pleading guilty as charged to all the counts. And second, the defendant's lack of a meaningful criminal history. The state recognizes that the court likely will and should give some consideration to those factors when imposing a sentence today, and that these factors would mitigate against the maximum possible sentence of 18 to 23 and a half years in prison. However, the nature of this attack on Deputy Vaught, and really as a society, on society as a whole, is truly the most egregious type of conduct that falls within this category of offense of attempted aggravated murder. It's for these reasons that the state requests that the defendant be sentenced to 7 years on the underlying gun specification and be sentenced to 10 to 15 years on the attempted aggravated murder count to be served consecutive to the gun specification for a total sentence of 17 to 22 years. This represents the maximum sentence that the defendant could be sentenced to for these charges, with the defendant being given mitigating credit of 1 year for pleading guilty as charged to all counts and accepting responsibility for his actions, as well as for his lack of a significant criminal history. At this time, Deputy Sarah Vaught would like to address the court.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge. A few inches. But for a few inches, neither of us would be here today. But for a few inches, and we both survived. Since March, I have been listening to the defense counsel speak about the many people who have vouched for Lance Runion's kind and loving character. How prior to this incident, you, Lance Runion, were a fine, upstanding citizen with no criminal history, an ex-corrections officer, a teacher, a pillar of his community. These facts about him have been listed as accolades and mitigating factors in an attempt to prove that you do not present a threat to others. This incident, this time that you pointed a gun at my face with no cause and pulled the trigger, that was just a one-off event. But for me, all that makes what you did exponentially worse. It makes you more dangerous than a career criminal with a violent history because your violence is unpredictable, unprovoked, and inexplicable. I have dealt with hundreds of people in crisis during my 12 years on patrol. Intoxicated people, suicidal people, people in psychosis, people whose children I am taking away, people who have committed terrible crimes and are facing long prison sentences, people who were all of those things at the same time. And Lance Runion is the only one that has tried to kill me. And for what? I was there with my crewmates to check on you when your family could not, to offer assistance if needed. We had no prior history. You had committed no crime, you faced no negative repercussions, and yet you met me at the door with murderous intent. A U.S. Department of Justice study of officers ambushed from 2001-2011 found that when officers were ambushed with a firearm at a distance of 0 to 5 feet, only 34% of those officers survived the encounter. I am now part of the 34%. Thanks to all of my trainers through the years, police and civilian, who when I needed it the most helped me find a few inches to survive within. A few inches which have allowed me to return to my work serving my community. But I did not survive unharmed. Physically, I was okay. Some gunpowder burns on my left hand, a sore shoulder from ducking into the brick wall, minor effects that went away within a few weeks. Nothing that kept me from returning to work a week after Lance Runion tried to kill me. What did not go away were the nightmares, racing thoughts, insomnia, irritability, lack of concentration, jumpiness, adrenaline dumps at the slightest threats, gagging every time I brushed my teeth. The list goes on. I kept waiting for these effects to dwindle with time, but they did not. In fact, some of them got worse. Walking up to a home on a call for service, knocking on the front door, or ringing the doorbell sent my body into an instant adrenaline dump as it prepared for what my brain knew was an imminent attack. Then the severe nausea would start, and the physical shaking, and the shallow breathing. The nature of the call for service was irrelevant. My brain saw everything as a threat. But this nice lady that just answered her door to report an identity fraud, she was expecting a calm professional. So I'd smile and tamp down the bile rising in my throat as I hoped she didn't hear my voice tremble while I helped sort through her problem. I knew what I was experiencing was untenable. Fortunately, I have a wonderful support system, and they encouraged me to seek help. Before I even asked, my department reached out to Dr. Chard at the UC Stress Center. And weeks later, when I realized I needed help, they were ready for me. I was diagnosed with PTSD and went through months of treatment until my symptoms were under control. I am still healing and will carry the effects of this with me for the rest of my life, as it has forged me from iron into steel. But the effects of you trying to kill me, they're larger than just you and me. Millions of people have watched this video. Some of those people have been my coworkers, my friends, my family, and it haunts them. Some of them are your neighbors who watched as a man, much like themselves, committed a horrendous, unthinkable act, and suddenly they felt less safe in their community. For police officers, what you did is our nightmare scenario. And on February 15th, 2021, my nightmares became reality. And now, police officers across the nation will watch it on repeat in training classes for years to come. I can't help but wonder for how many of them it will be the final straw in this job is just too dangerous and not worth it scenarios. They will leave their calling behind, and you, Lance Runion, will have played a part in the loss. How many of those people who watched you almost kill me are loved ones of police officers and had sleepless nights renewed with an unsettled ache of worry because of you? Your actions on February 15th were like a pebble dropped in water, and the ripples will be felt for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Mr. Fornshaw?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Mr. Grauman?
Thank you, Judge. Lance is 57 years old, Your Honor. He has no prior criminal history whatsoever. He's been married to his wife, Susan, who's here in the courtroom for the past 23 years, and he has an adult stepson with her. Mr. Runion holds a master's degree from Xavier and is college educated. Hearing Mr. Fornshaw speak, I think Lance would likely echo or even state many of the same comments that Mr. Fornshaw made about law enforcement. As he noted, my client is former law enforcement. He was a correctional officer at LCI, and as part of that, was dispatched to assist in the Lucasville prison riots. After that, he transitioned to education, spent the rest of his career teaching, coaching, and working as an intervention specialist until he retired. In addition to being shot multiple times as a result of this incident, Your Honor, Lance has already been suffering from significant health issues, including liver and kidney issues. And on top of the physical health issues, he's suffering and has been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and since being incarcerated, been diagnosed with early onset dementia. And unfortunately, in talking with Lance and his doctors, it sounds like the PTSD has existed for a significant amount of time. And unfortunately, that went largely and almost entirely untreated, except for a few doctor's visits in late 2017. Your Honor, I think it's clear based on his resume, based on his character, based on the amount of support that he has. Lance has spent his life serving this community in one form or another, and I think it's clear that's had an impact on numerous people. And that's why, in knowing Lance and getting to know Lance through this incident was completely out of character for him. So it begs the question, why did it ever happen? And I'm not sure there's ever going to be an answer for that. I can speculate all day long, and my thought would be it was a combination of his mental health issues, medications he was on, and consuming alcohol that night. Because this was something that, in 57 years of his life, that was just completely out of character. Nobody had ever seen anything like that out of him. And in talking with Lance and reviewing this video with Lance previously, quite honestly, he doesn't remember that evening. He doesn't know what happened. But I know he deeply regrets his actions. He's been extremely remorseful. One of the first things he asked me was, how soon would it be till he could apologize to the deputy? And as Mr. Cornshell noted, my client has accepted responsibility. He pled guilty as charged and realizes he's facing a significant prison sentence. And the reality with that, too, is the very real possibility either himself or his wife, who also has significant health issues, may not survive that incarceration. So we just ask the court to take those things into consideration when imposing a sentence on Lance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grallman. Mr. Runion, is there anything you would like to say before I pronounce your sentence?
Yeah, I'd like to apologize to the deputy, the other officers. I just don't remember much of it. I'm sorry that it happened, not because I'm in trouble, but because for everybody. It's all.
Is there anything else, sir?
I never ever would have. That's not me. I don't remember what happened. I don't remember even being in the hospital much. I'm thankful for the deputies for saving my life, and then also for the ambulance crew and the doctors. I understand they did quite a bit to save me. A couple times, I guess I passed away. But I'm just sorry. Sorry to all of you.
The court's considered the statements made here today, the pre-sentence investigation, together with the purposes and the principles of sentencing, the relevant seriousness and recidivism factors. The court does find that all three counts are allied offenses of similar import, and counts 2 and count 3 will be merged into count 1. Likewise, the specifications on count 1 will be merged together, the state electing to proceed on count 1 with the 7-year gun specification. Mr. Runion, you cannot offer an explanation to the court as to why this happened. Obviously, I'm in no position to be able to try to explain it either. Obviously, I think everyone here is grateful that Deputy Vaught was not injured physically in any way, that she was, actually she appeared in my court, I think about 3 weeks after this event to testify in a case, and I was actually, it was remarkable to have her testify in my court. I was shocked that she was here. But even beyond that, the other deputies that were on the scene who, after that event that they witnessed, you attacking one of their own, immediately turned and rushed to your aid. Again, remarkable service from our deputies. Our Warren County Sheriff's Office is probably some of the best deputies around. But again, I can't explain why you did what you did, whether it's your PTSD, the combination of that with your medication and the alcohol. Certainly, your use of alcohol is no excuse for you committing any crime.
Right.
This court presides over our Veterans Court here in Warren County, and I see many, many defendants who are suffering from PTSD, from combat-related injuries or survivor's guilt, and they do not react in the way that you reacted today, or this day. So I don't have an explanation. The court does appreciate the fact that we didn't have to go through a trial. The court does appreciate the fact that you didn't make Sarah Vaught go through it having to testify. I'm sure she's been reliving this every single day since it's happened, but you did acknowledge your guilt. You do not have a prior record, so the court does take that into consideration. So the court is going to order you to serve a period of 10 years, a minimum term sentence in prison with a maximum term of 15 years. You'll also be required to serve a 7-year mandatory prison sentence on the gun spec, which must be served prior to and consecutive to the mandatory or the minimum term sentence. Now, it is possible for you to earn good time credit of 5 to 15% against your minimum term sentence for good behavior. The court does have a right to deny that good time credit. A hearing would be held to make that determination. Regardless of whether you receive good time credit, you will be released when you finish your minimum term, unless the ODRC determines that you must remain in prison for bad conduct. The court is not involved in that decision. If you're not released when your minimum term ends, you'll serve an additional specified period of time, and given a new release date, you will serve until that date unless you are again denied release. This process could repeat until you are released or you finish your maximum term sentence. Now, you're also subject to a mandatory period of post-release control, which means upon your release from prison, the adult parole authority will supervise you for a maximum term of 5 years. If you violate the terms of that supervision, you can be returned to prison for up to 1/2 of the court's original mandatory or minimum term sentence. If your violation is that you commit another felony, you can be returned to prison for 1 year, or the period that you have left on PRC, whichever is longer. That time will automatically be consecutive to any additional prison time that you get sentenced to. Now, you do have a right to appeal this court's decision of your sentence to the 12th District Court of Appeals, which is located in Middletown. If you want to appeal, you must file your notice of appeal within 30 days of today's date. If you can't afford to pay for the cost of the transcript or anything necessary for your appeal, it will all be provided to you at no cost. If you cannot afford an attorney, I will appoint one for you at no cost. The court does find that you're indigent for the purpose of any fines, costs, or other financial sanctions. Mr. Fornshell, is there anything else?
We have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, the only clarification we want to make sure that the court makes on the record is that the 7-year spec and the 10 years, those are mandatory terms.
Correct. And they are required by law to run consecutive to each other, so I do not need to make any necessary findings for consecutive sentences. Agreed?
Thank you, Your Honor.
The only other thing is this jail time credit. We talked a little bit in chambers about that. It looks like the dates on that is March 6th. Is that the correct date?
Yes, that's the correct date.
All right. So I'll give you credit for the 192 days you've already served in prison.
Well, the judge, he was also then in custody, though, not in jail, but while he was in the hospital until being discharged to the Warren County Jail.
Your Honor, I don't believe, I'd have to double check, I don't believe he was charged right away while he was in the hospital. I don't think he was necessarily charged and served with his warrant for a period of time.
All right, that's something that the court can always review later. I'll note for the record today 192 days credit. If there's some other information, Mr. Grauman, that you want to bring to the court's attention with regard to the jail time credit, I'll certainly more than happy to. I can amend that later on if that's the case. Okay. Is there anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Grauman, anything from defense?
No, Judge, thank you.
All right, very good. That's all.
All rise.